everybody just wants to be seen and heard and understood and seen for how good they are. And the same is true inside.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when we can bring that level of like love and understanding to our parts, that's actually how we get the balance that people are always seeking and craving.
Welcome to Wild and Finally Fucking Free, the show for disruptors, rebels, and revolutionaries who know they're here to change the damn world. I'm Kylie Patchett, your voice and visibility catalyst, and here we dive into unapologetic truth, magnetic messaging, and visibility that actually feels good in your body, your bones, and your business. We share the stories of the out-of-the-box, neuro-sparkly, creative, witchy wild ones rewriting how we live, love, learn, and lead. This isn't about being louder. It's about being rooted, resonant, and regulated so you can be real, raw, and ready to roar. If you're done contorting yourself to fit the mold and you're ready to own your voice, your power, and your place in the revolution, welcome home. Let's dive in. Starting this podcast with the happy damn. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. I have my beautiful friend Andrea Tessier all the way over in Canada on the flip side at 4:30 in the afternoon, and it's dark already. And here I am at 7:30 in the morning, and it's bright and it's going to be hot. So welcome, Andrea. How are you?
Hey, Kylie. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
We've known each other for a year now, or over a year. Over a year. We were both part of a mastermind last year, and I got to know you. And I love, when you're in a mastermind and you're walking alongside of each other when you're going through these wild, like expansive times in business. And as we're going to talk about, often our parts can come out and play. But for those of you that out there that don't already know Andrea, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do in the world?
Yeah. So, like you said, I am Andrea Tessier. I live in Toronto, Canada. And I have the privilege of, for a living, I help people trust themselves. That's what I get to do. And it's so fun and it's so exciting. I primarily use internal family systems, or IFS is one of the core modalities, but at the same time, I've trained as a master coach in over, 20 different modalities, but also bring in a lot of my intuitive gifts and spiritual coaching to my work as well. But outside of my work, I was a teacher before I was a coach. And so that's a big part of my journey as well. And, because I am in good company here, I'm an emotional generator, 3-5 profile. And I'm also a Virgo sun, Aries rising, my moon in Taurus. So you can expect like this grounded practicality, but also this like a fiery passion for transformation and consciousness as well.
It's so cool. I just as I say, I've known you as a friend and colleague and peer for quite some time. I got the chance to actually be a fly on the wall and a participant actually, because you just came into my Raw Revolution group and ran a masterclass for us, because we had been talking about this, like when our parts are driving the business bus and when our authentic self is not in the driver's seat, things can go a little bit pear-shaped. And you came and helped us to understand this specific part, which was the striver part, which I hard relate to. Like in my terminology, that's like the overpreneur part of me, like a very, driven, like overworking, over-delivering, overdoing everything. And it was so cool. Like I love seeing people in their genius zone. And I was just sitting back and like I was participating as well, but there was a part of me, I like to use parts language, like just sitting back and marinating in seeing you in your genius and seeing all of the beautiful revolution ladies just being like, oh, like, those chiropractic adjustment moments where they're like, oh, you've just rearranged my identity of myself here. And I think the coolest thing about that whole experience for me was just being reminded, if that's a word, how. And I know we weren't working on like a deep pattern or any particular trauma or anything, but just how readily the parts of us want to actually interact and want to actually be like, here's what I'm here for. This is what I'm trying to protect you from. And that's one of the biggest things that we got as feedback too. It's like, I can't believe that, like, this part that I see almost as sometimes like the enemy or a problem or something that needs to be shoved down or somehow like pushed through or whatever, is actually like really wanting a dialogue and a relationship. So is that, yeah, how was your experience of that, the
It's
group?
so funny, like, I've jumped into loads of groups and
Yeah.
offered, like, workshops into parts, whether it's, like, in our entrepreneurial journey, whether it's in relationship, like, there's so many different ways we can work with our parts, and I love going into people's groups because it's already, like, a really lovely, safe
Yeah.
place where people like each other and are connected in some way. And, I first I would be like, "Oh, I hope I can guide hundreds of, like, people one-on-one, no problem." But at first I was like, "Can I actually do this in a group? Will people feel something? Will they actually connect?" And turns out, yes. Yes, that's incredible. And always amazing to me how ready these parts are, ready and willing to talk to us. And it is like a very woo-woo thing. Like, oh, people who have had trouble like really grasping it and understanding it, as soon as they're really guided and dropped into it, like even the most skeptical people are like, whoa, I don't know what just happened.
Yeah. But do you know what? I think you said something really important before, grounded practicality, right? Like what you're doing is hugely transformational and is quite almost nebulous of like, I'm taking this system inside of me and I'm pulling them out and I'm having a chat and whatever. But because you have such a grounded, like, I don't know, you're so anchored. And so it just makes everyone, that grounded practicality is something that's very key in your magic. I feel like it's just like, because there's an automatic safety. And I get what you're saying, like coming into someone else's group, there's already no like trust community, it's a safe environment, but still what you're asking us to do could be like edgy for people or feel very
Uh,
scary. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was like even some of the ladies that, had expressed like, oh, I'm not sure if I don't know, I don't really understand parts work, which we'll get to in a second, but just totally relaxed and was like, oh, okay, we're having an experience and I'm safe. And yeah, it was very cool. Let's zoom out though, because we're talking about parts work and we're talking about parts of us. And I feel like there needs to be like a broad brushstroke. What the heck are we talking about?
Yeah, so parts work, internal family systems is based on the work of Dr. Richard Schwartz. And the idea is that we're all made up of this like intricate system of parts. And I love the model personally because, well, it's evidence based. There's actually research to say that it works, but also it's like really, really compassionate. Like it takes like this, you are the expert on you kind of lens.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make me the expert on you. It allows you truly to tap into your highest self, your self leadership. And, I think there's a lot of models out there that you can pathologize the person. And I
Hmm.
think IFS does quite the opposite. It actually empowers.
Yeah.
And that's why I love it so much. But these parts are technically like these sub minds, sub personalities that each have their own perspective and feelings and motivations. And, we're familiar with some key players in our system, like the perfectionist part, or the inner critic, or the people pleaser, or the procrastinator. Like those are classic parts. And a lot of people, until they develop the awareness, they think, oh, I am just a people pleaser, or
Yeah.
I'm just a procrastinator. And they take on that identity. But what we actually do in internal family systems is we give space to say, okay, a part of me definitely is, but not all of me. Right? There are circumstances in your life where you don't perfect everything, I would, for years, I would have considered myself a perfectionist, but like, oh, when it came to, like, cooking, like,
Oh,
dinner,
goodness.
like, no big deal, tastes like crap, whatever. Like, that
Yeah. Yeah.
but, like, not always, and so that's actually what we get to do in internal family systems, and, people kinda think like, "Oh, this is just me thinking," but
Mm.
actually what we come to see is like, "No, that's actually you blended with a part."
Yeah.
Don't like you, I get that, and it's not you, and when people start to have space, and we call that like unblending from a part, they do get to connect with their like true self, like their highest essence. And they aren't as compelled or overwhelmed by some of these patterns in the way that they used to be, which is an absolute game changer in every aspect of our life, but especially like in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, when I came across parts work, it was this completely new lens because I used to have this kind of inner tension, I want to say, and we would call it polarization in parts work language. But this, I would say, like I have two sides of me, like Jekyll and Hyde, one that craves freedom, one that craves security, right? And I was totally blended with both of them. Like it at any different moment, I could be rebelling and saying, and then, but also wanting to be like everything is safe and everything is predictable and everything is routine, right? And
Totally.
part of me that
Yeah.
says that's kind of autism and ADHD. But anyway, but when I came across
Also, also just human design
yes,
sometimes.
exactly.
Like I experience those because I have such a wide split in my human design.
Yes. Actually, yeah, that's a very good point because my split is between head and ajna and the rest of my, yeah, very good point. But yeah, when I came across internal family systems, it gave me a way of understanding that I could take a step back from either of those ways of being in my mind and actually find this much more quiet, what we would say, self with a capital S. I always say self with a capital S, which I call my wild woman. That's like, oh, so this part of me is actually very quiet and intuitive, and there's no gripping or grasping or fighting against or fighting for or like any of that like binary kind of like if I don't have routine I'm not safe kind of thing, like if this then that. It's like, oh no, I'm safe because I'm here in my
Mhm.
wild woman, and those
Mm.
are parts, but that little bit of separation was what I needed
Yeah.
because up
Yeah.
until then I always thought there was almost like a personality flaw or a like a something about myself that I really didn't like, actually, because it felt a little bit chaotic, right? Swinging from one to the other. But now that I understand that actually underneath all of that noise, but also, of course, like integration. Well, one thing I wanted to ask you, when we're talking about business and like we talked about the striving part, right? I have a striving part and then a rebel that if the striver plays the game too long, then the rebel comes online, right? Which is pretty much the pattern that we just talked about.
Yeah.
How do you, like, when you talk about parts in entrepreneurship, how do you like wrap this entrepreneurial roller coaster that we're on, which is like self-development on crack? How do you wrap like parts work understanding through that whole game?
Yeah. People don't really have business problems. They have personal problems disguised as business problems.
Correct. Right. That
It's
is
like,
that is
is running
correct.
my business today? Is it the one that doubts things?
Right.
Is it the one that outsources things, right? Is it the rule follower? Is it the imposter? Is it the procrastinator? Who is running my business today? Okay, well, none of those parts are me.
Yes.
And that is the emotional roller coaster of entrepreneurship is, one part has having this big vision and the excitement to move forward, and the other parts that are just like, oh, hell no, that is absolutely terrifying because we remember that time that happened in the third grade and we were absolutely humiliated. We are never
Mhm.
that again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
we can intellectualize all day around it, but until we actually go and understand and witness those parts, they're going to run our business.
Mhm.
Right? They're going
Mhm.
to. And the thing about that is like it's not sustainable, right? If we have these manager parts or these protector parts that are trying to do this like a visionary work for us, we don't have access to that core of us that we need because what we are creating in the world that we're creating in, our parts don't understand that and they couldn't ever. But self energy can lead you through that
Yeah.
because it's clear and it's connected and it's courageous as fuck.
Yeah. Yes.
So we need to be connected to self energy in order to actually do this version of entrepreneurship that we're being asked to do right now,
Mhm.
because there isn't a model for this,
No.
right? Most of us aren't out there selling a product. We're not going door to door and selling vacuums, right?
Yep.
We're selling
Thankfully.
like transformational work, and there isn't a model for this. And it so much requires your own embodiment and authenticity. And if your pars are trying to run your decision making, or if they're trying to run your marketing systems or sales, or even your client work, if you work with clients,
Mm.
it's just not going to work for the long term. And so being able to support people with the parts that come up while they're running their businesses and their practices is what makes it like fully aligned.
Quick pause, my love. If you've been feeling like you've outgrown some of the boxes you used to fit in, or there's a version of you that is ready to speak more unapologetically, to lead from a whole other, more bold, more beautiful evolution, and to be seen for your unique gifts and genius, you need to get your hands on a Genius You human design reading. And no, this is not a human design reading like you know it through the tropical system with like a rote, surface level generic description. This is actually the way that I do human design through the lens of true sidereal, which is true sky at the time of your birth, human design, and an intuitive coaching audio breakdown that decodes your voice, your visibility, your purpose. It is a massive permission slip. It is a mirror to your magnificence. And it is the perfect gift right now to yourself to enter 2026 with a whole new level of the evolution you're stepping into. The way that I see true sidereal human design is like the next step, the next stage, the next wild woman, yes, to your evolution. And right now, these are half price, which is $222 US for a 60 plus page report, an hour of intuitive coaching from me in audio reading format, and also the ability to add on an in-person intuitive coaching session to answer any specific questions that you might have as a follow-up. And they are available very, very, very excitingly on my brand new website. Now, it's a complicated URL, so if you're listening to this, go and check the show notes. But where you will find them is offers.kyliepatchett.com/genius. offers.kyliepatchett.com/genius. All right, back to the show. Yeah. I think that as you're talking, like, I'm going back to my first iteration of entrepreneurship, like the first 6 years I was in business before I took a break because I was like, this is completely unsustainable. And something happened in my personal life that made it very hard to stay as a coach. And I look back and I'm like, my, like what I would call overpreneur, but striver part was running the show. Like she was driving the bus 24/7. I wasn't aware that there was any self energy underneath it. And I just look back, I think we've had this conversation just recently when we were chatting as well, like look back at even the way that I held space for people and coach. There was so much like I'm overly responsible for your outcome and over delivery and boundary pushing and not pushing, stepping over boundaries and everything. And because that part of me needed that feedback, right? But it was absolutely unsustainable, exhausting as fuck, and was never ever like I had such a big like my identity when I basically picked up my bat and ball, had a dummy spit, sent an email and said I'm closing my business down and left pretty much. But I remember sending that email and just having this huge sense of relief in my body because it was completely unsustainable for that to happen. And it's like now, if I notice that a part is very strong, I'm pausing to make peace with or make friends with or listen to or resource myself or not work at all that day. Like I've definitely done that lately because life is lifing. And yeah, there's just I've kind of been reflecting on the last year. There's so much more what's the word? Anchored is the word. Like just life can be lifing and shit can be going on and whatever, but the sense of being anchored and compared to my last iteration of business, I just think, like, I mean, I still definitely have parts come out and play, and still that striver part is, the big one for me. But I also, as you're talking, like, can you help us understand, like, why do these parts form
Yeah.
and what is their purpose? Because I think there's a really
Yeah.
big mistaken belief that these parts are trying to fuck with us or
Sabotage.
screw out, yeah, sabotage. Yes, that's
Oh,
the
wait.
word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sabotage. You don't have a sabotager. Number one, it's not true.
Mhm.
But yeah, they make up who we are, and they're those different voices or aspects of our personality. But I mean, from a neuroscience perspective, they're activated neural pathways. They're not actually little like beings living.
Although I do give mine full personalities in
Oh,
cartoon.
yeah, and they do have them, but it's like these neural pathways have been activated so many times throughout life. They're just like very easy to access and go on that
Mhm,
road.
mhm.
But they develop at certain points in our life to sometimes help us survive or cope with big T or little t trauma. They might show up to help protect us from harm or discomfort. They might just get things done, like our striver parts, right? They might motivate us to do our best. Sometimes that's aggressively, like our inner kid. They also bring us pleasure or relief, which can be really nice. The part that's like, oh, hey, you do need a break or you do deserve a treat today. But it's also sometimes addiction
Yeah,
in extreme,
yeah.
right? Or they're there to distract us from painful feelings, memories, experiences. Like those can be our dissociative parts, or when we suddenly are working on a project and we feel like we have to sleep, like parts that are just, trying to distract us from feeling uncomfortable because they think that we can't handle it.
Mhm.
And so lots of good reasons for them to develop, often developed in our younger years. And, we develop a whole protective system to make sure that we are okay. And then underneath that protective system, whether they are manager parts or firefighter parts, we can go into both of that. But underneath them are like really tender ones. Sometimes people call it the inner child or exile if you use IFS language. And these are the ones that were hurt or harmed or humiliated in some way, and the system has been suppressing or repressing it and are afraid of like what might happen if this part comes out.
Yes. Yeah.
And so we develop these like really wise ways of coping that work for a time until they don't.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And when they're not working anymore is when people usually start going, okay, I don't want to do this pattern anymore. I don't want to act like this anymore, but I can't seem to stop because they're blended with it.
Yeah. As you're talking, I feel um, like the whole concept, and I do want to go into like firefighters and managers as well, because it will make this other question that I'm just about to ask, like a fully formed understanding for people. When I understood that the system, like any system, like even a family system, like actually kids and parents, right? There is parts that we play, roles that we play, and it's to keep the system in balance. So, never been so true when you have two daughters completely different. So, one very much, anyway, I won't go into my family dynamics probably. I'm just thinking these are adult children now. We probably don't need to say that anyway. But, there's roles that balance each other. So if you have someone in an extreme state of whatever, then there's often someone that does the opposite to keep the system.
Well, even in your story, right,
Yeah.
where you were talking about,
Yes.
Riley Patchett Business 1.0 was like striver.
Yeah.
And to balance out the striver was that firefighter that just came online and was like, burn that shit down today. We're done.
And also, before that firefighter came out, my go-to firefighter for my entire life formed very clearly, like in my mind, I can remember the first time I did this at 4 years old, binge eating. Like,
Yes.
perfect fire behavior. Like, this is too scary. I'm just going to get some relief temporarily, obviously. So, yeah, I think that also, anyway, my point was the system loves to be in balance. And so understanding that sometimes we can feel like there's like this internal war, and it's like, no, it's actually seeking harmony overall, like the system. And how cool is it that our system understands how to do that? Is it wild? Like, yes, okay, maybe it's not healthy, or it's not something that we can want to continue as adults, but how cool is it that our system somehow knew how to form parts to protect us? Otherwise, we may not have survived, like quite literally in some cases. So wild. Anyway, let's go back to managers and firefighters, because I always
Wow.
find this funny because, two of my family members are actual firefighters. It's like,
I can start with firefighters because firefighters are usually the patterns, the parts of ourselves we love to hate.
Mhm.
And they got a whole ton of slack in our system, right? Like if we have a binge eating part, like how much do you hate yourself for, after a binge? Like
Mhm.
I know what that's like.
Yep.
Or if you have too many glasses of wine, like how many of us like hate ourselves after we do that?
Yeah.
It's so easy to hate our firefighter parts without realizing that they play such a critical role in our system to bring balance.
Yeah.
Because you have managers that are more proactive. Their job is literally to get ahead and prevent any bad things from happening ever.
Yeah.
That's the job.
That's
And
my
then
overpreneur, the clipboard carrying overpreneur that ticks things off and makes sure that everything gets done before you can have fun. Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they work so darn hard for us. And listen, like we love our manager parts. Like our manager parts are the ones that help us get here on time and make sure the tech is working and make sure that we're organized. Like we love them. And when they're over functioning in a system, like your overpreneur striving part, or our perfectionist parts, or our people pleasers that are trying to manage our relationships and how we're viewed in relationship, they're working absolutely overtime. It's like we can't rest. Like I can't do anything until the to-do list is done.
Mhm.
I'm trying to manage your perception of me, which is an impossible task because I can't control that. But that applies to anyway, right? Because I'm safe if you approve of me and there's belonging here. And so these parts are running on overdrive. It's absolutely exhausting. And so we need our firefighters to hop in and bring balance to the system. But the way that they do it is a lot more like just like all systems down, like down. Like both of them are trying to protect the exile, the tender one underneath.
Mhm.
Different ways of doing it. One's trying to get ahead, and one's like, oh, we're too close to the exile. We're just shutting things down right now.
Yeah. I always I think about the firefighters being like the pressure cooker valve, like when literally when you're using a pressure cooker and it's like the pressure of the system is getting too high. It's not sustainable. So I need to circuit break. And yeah, for me, like alcohol's never been my thing, but food, far out, man. Like I say, I can remember that behavior starting at like 4 years old.
Well, for other people, it's like rage or extreme anger,
Yeah.
or even like extreme, like adrenaline junkie kind of behavior, right? And like, where can I just create balance in this way? Where can I kind of depressurize? And I mean, some of those things can be fun. Like none of these things are bad in moderation, but depending on what the come from is, if the sense of urgency is there to like really protect,
Yeah.
then we want to bring some balance to that. And can we bring some protection for those little ones inside so that these ones don't have to work so hard?
Yeah.
And for energy comes in, right?
Thanks for tuning in to another episode. If this episode lit a fire in your body, in your business, deep down in your bones, please take a moment to drop a rating and review so more rebels just like you can find us. And don't keep this goodness to yourself. Share it with your disruptive rebel and revolutionary friends who are ready to roar right alongside of you. Until next time, stay wild, stay unapologetic, and stay fucking free.